Welcome to Hmong 102, Understanding Hmong and Early Childhood, presented by Song Va and Si Vu. In this webinar, there will be more information about Hmong culture, tradition, and data. Life after the refugee camps. After the refugee camps, Hmong families began anew in America. Learning how to adapt to a new society and becoming familiar with the unfamiliar was a must. Some parents attended school for the first time to learn English as a second language. Some went to trade school programs to learn specific job skills, while very few made it into a 2 to 4 year college. Some went straight to work, not knowing a word in English. All of the 1.5 generation were young children attending the public schools. Today, most of these children hold a profession such as community leaders, business owners, doctors, lawyers. Life in America. After being in the United States for nearly 40 years, the Hmong people have adapted to life in America, but it has not changed much when it comes to family. Some families still live in multi-generation households, while others adapted to the American society. Due to the family and community functions, Hmong choose to live close to one another as community. For this reason, the three states with the highest Hmong populations are California, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. The next few slides will go into more details of each state. California. California has over 100,000 Hmong. The two cities with the most Hmong are Fresno at nearly 32,000 and Sacramento at nearly 27,000. There are also Hmong scattered throughout California with a smaller density. Due to warmer weather, many families turn to owning and operating farms. Even with the warmer weather and farming businesses, many families still chose to move to Minnesota for different or Minnesota. There are over 66,000 Hmong living in Minnesota. The counties with the most Hmong are Ramsey County at over 35,000, Hennepin County at over 17,000, followed by Washington County at over 4,500. Since the 2010, these numbers may. Wisconsin. Wisconsin has nearly 50,000 Hmong living there. Milwaukee has the highest concentration of Hmong at nearly 12,000. Other cities have Hmong too, but in smaller numbers. The map here shows the different counties where Hmong live. The darker green areas have more Hmong, and the lighter green has less. Since Wisconsin and Minnesota are neighboring states, family members often travel between the two for social and traditional gatherings, such as weddings, funerals, and clans. Culturally, when a Hmong woman marries her husband, she takes on her husband's last name. That's the link in the relationship between the two clans. But in the United States, some children may take their mother's last name on the birth certificate due to special circumstance, such as divorce before giving birth to the child or out of wedlock. As you can see, there are only 18 last names. Some are spelled slightly different, but still considered the same last name. Traditional practices. Name ceremony. Naming ceremony and soul-calling ceremony, or hupli, intertwine with one another during the process of the event. For newborn babies, the ceremony is 3 days after birth, but today, most families wait a month later so the mother can help with the ceremony. Another time for the ceremonies is when men get married and have few children. This process normally hosted by the wife's side of the family. Once the naming ceremony takes place, people are encouraged to call him by his new name, and the birth name is no longer important. This means the person is considered mature. Note: single men never have this ceremony until they are married. String tying is the last process, and its purpose is to give blessing for better health from everyone. Culture and religion. When you enter a Hmong family's house, you may see an altar or a sukkah, house spirit protector, or both displayed in the living room. A sukkah is made out of joss paper with chicken feathers glued onto the paper, displayed on one of the walls. These two things hold cultural significance and traditional beliefs. Not every Hmong families will have these two things in their homes, so do not be surprised if some homes have it and others do not. In the next two slides, there will be more information about Suga, house spirit protector. In some Hmong families' homes, there may be a suga or a house spirit protector displayed on a wall in the living room or the dining room, similar to the one in this picture. The purpose of the suga or the house spirit protector is to protect the family spiritually year-round. It is important to be mindful of the cultural differences and the traditional practices. An altar. An altar is made out of woods, covered with joss papers, such as the one in this picture. Shaman. The Hmong community often seek for a shaman's advice when necessary. This does not mean they are not seeking medical treatment. In Minnesota, shamans are not recognized by the medical doctors like in California. Doctors in California welcome the spiritual healings from Hmong shamans. Therefore, shamans are certified as an expert to help with the healing. Funeral. Funerals in America are much longer in process due to scheduling and space for a funeral. The location has to be rented and the dates need to be scheduled. Family will have to take time off from work to start with the preparations. When working with parents during times like this, be mindful and understand the long process for funeral preparation, because it starts from the day the person passes until the day of the burial. Hence, it may take 3 weeks to 1 month, depending on scheduling and availability. Hmong wedding. Hmong weddings are a joint relationship between the two clans. Before the bride can enter into the groom's house, a process awaits them at the door to acknowledge the ancestor of a new family member. A few days after, a ceremony for the newlywed couple occurs with acknowledgement to the ancestor and the clan. Now the bride becomes part of the family and is protected by the ancestor spiritually. During the ceremony, cousins who attend will contribute money to help with the wedding. The last process is the actual wedding on Friday evening at the bride's house, and then ends at the groom's house, which lasted until Saturday evening. Holidays. Culturally, Hmong New Year is the only holiday celebrated. It is at the end of the harvest season. This event is open to the public and all are welcome to attend. Before the big event, each family hosts the soul calling ceremony, or hupli, for the entire family in their home. This process uses eggs and incense to call all the family spirits together. During this time, the ancestors are acknowledged and asked to protect the family in the upcoming year. Once this is done, the community can enjoy the public celebration. In Minnesota, both private and public celebrations are often done annually during the weekend of the Thanksgiving holiday. Dynamics of family structures. In the old days, families lived together in intergenerational households for agricultural reasons. Today, some families still follow the tradition for social and economic support. For generations, Hmong were taught to care for their parents when they become of age, because the parents took care of them growing up. In the United States, the traditional upbringing system does not work well for families because of job relocations and adaptations to the new society. Therefore, many families live as community instead of intergenerational households. Positions and titles. It is uncommon for Hmong to call each other by their first name if the person is married. Below is the list of some titles for each individual on both sides of the families. The father side of the family: grandfather, yo; grandmother, bo; mother, nia; father, zi; great aunt, polo; great uncle, yo lao; older brother, di lo; younger brother, gu; older uncle, zi lo or la; younger uncle, zin zao; older brother's wife, nia la or nia ti; younger brother's wife, nian zao; sister-in-law, nya; sister, mua; grandchildren, sengzu; mother's side of the family: grandfather, yo zi; grandmother, nia ti; uncle, zin zao; aunt, pao; brother, da lo; older sister, nia lao or dai lao; younger sister, nia hlo or dai hlo; brother-in-law, vao. Why Hmong chose Minnesota? When Hmong first came to the United States, there were church organizations across the nation that sponsored families. These families were scattered through certain parts of the United States, including Hawaii. Later, the families started hearing about other Hmong resettlements in California, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. From there, family moved closer to their friends and families in these three states. Hmong had always lived in community by clans. They will move to states where most of their families lived. In Minnesota, it started out with families living closer to one another. Today, that reason still resonates in many families, but one of the biggest reasons is for better education and job opportunities.
Education back at home. General education. Back in the homeland, there was not a formal system of education. Because Hmong are a nomadic group that migrate from places to places, it was difficult to set up a formal system for adults and children to learn. Also, most of migration journeys are due to wars that it is impossible to set up a system and produce written documentation that could survive the war zone environment. Today, Hmong scholars are still searching for survived artifacts in China that may be origins belonging to Hmong and may give us oral information. The only method of education is through oral storytelling. Hmong have many folk tales with morals, values, and themes that reflect the cultural community. Knowledge and information is passed down to children orally. For example, when reciting names of family ancestors during a New Year celebration ritual, a grandfather would orally recite and teach the father all the names. When the grandfather is not there anymore, it would be the father's turn to perform the ritual, and he too would recite and teach his sons the names of generations of ancestors. These ancestral names recite the family tree all the way to China. There are no family diagram or a list of names for one to refer. Education is also through hands-on experience. Since there were no written knowledge, Hmong teach children to learn concepts by doing hands-on work. For example, since Hmong are gardeners, adults will teach children by physically showing children how to plant and care for the vegetables they are growing. To distinguish the different vegetables, a mother may point to the variety of names and teach the children what they are. The children will have to take mental note in detail of the different. Hmong adults use visuals for directions to teach children as well. They will verbally give instruction as well as show visuals. For example, a mother will teach her daughter how to steam rice. The mother will show the daughter how to rinse, scrub, and soak the rice before steaming. While steaming half through, the mother will show the daughter how to remove the rice from the double traditional rice steamer and cool it off before re-steaming the rice to complete the process. Today, when delivering and teaching new concepts to elders, using visuals, oral communication, and hands-on is more effective than directions on a. Cultural instructions are very common among elders because traditionally visual and oral communication are commonly practiced. Elders would memorize visually and oral cues. For example, if you are asking for directions, an elder would not give you a street name, but instead describe the direction with visual cues for you. The language would be something like, you go straight down this road until you see a rock on top of a hill, then turn to your left. Keep going straight until you see a log over a stream, then turn right. Don't go too far down that road though. Just take a few steps and you will see some houses. And Grandma's house is the one with the fence. Mental health topics are not discussed in the Hmong community. It is usually seen as a negative stigma. It is believed that it must be a karma for one's past life for one to have those symptoms this lifetime. It is also believed that there are negative spirits that is causing the symptoms, and one is recommended to get spiritual help before taking. Expectations in education. There are expectations for a person who have knowledge, and it is according to their view of education. Privileges versus entitlement. In the home country, Hmong children view education as a privilege. Everyone in the village is expected to do farming and gardening for survival. One can learn how to trade goods with neighbors for things they may not have. For example, you may offer your neighbor a pound of salt for a half a pound of meat. It may be appealing for your neighbor if your neighbor do not have salt. A family that could afford to send their children off to get formal education would be considered a rich family. Therefore, the children of that family is receiving education as a privilege. Children would wish to attend schooling instead of staying home and doing farming work, for it is such a harsh labor. Today in America, these second and third generation children view education as an entitlement. Parents view education towards their children as expected to go to school and perform well. There are also different knowledge expectations for different gender. Although both gender are expected to know in general what each other's responsibilities entails, knowledge expectations are required based on gender role. A male would be expected to know knowledge of providing for the family, such as hunting skills, labor skills, tool making, geography skills. A woman would be expected to have knowledge on running the household, such as business skills, gardening skills, medicine knowledge, food and food preparation, marital knowledge, hosting events, coordination experience. Today, these expectation is not as strictly anymore, but still very instilled in children and what type of knowledge they would need to obtain before others. Other education and expectation knowledge may be obtained based on age and the maturity level. In the United States, one is not considered as an adult until they reach the age of 18. The Hmong culture, adult starts at reaching puberty. Once a child reaches puberty and is showing physical signs, they are considered as an adult to handle mature topics and knowledge. For a teenage boy, he would be expected to know how to make tools, geography, land, and hunting skills as basics. For a teenager girl, she would be expected to know business and networking skills, gardening, medicine, and many other household chores as basics. However, decision-making is still run by parents and grandparents in the household. Just because one reached puberty and obtained the knowledge, if you are not married yet, your status is still considered as a child. There is also a cultural expectation for those who are educated. For one who went to formal schooling and comes back with a degree, the expectation is for you to share the knowledge with your community and make your contribution. Hmong cultural expectation believe that once you are a scholar and obtain knowledge, you are an expert in everything, meaning you are supposed to know and have the answer to everything, not just specializing in one area. Today, it is a conflict if you are a professional in one field or have a responsibility in one department and your Hmong client view you as an expert, thinking you know everything. It could come off as maybe you just do not want to help them. Family childcare provider role. With that said about cultural expectation for a professional or someone who has obtained formal education and knowledge, it also applies to educators. For family childcare providers and educators are viewed as the expert in their field. It is their responsibility to teach and have the children learn formal knowledge, including to perform well on academic exams. As an educator, it is common for one to feel that parents seem disengaged when you discuss about the poor performances of a Hmong student. The parent may be expecting that it is your responsibility in school to teach the formal education and academics that parents have no knowledge about. The parent's responsibility is teaching social and life skills. For a family childcare provider or an educator, it will probably be a battle between what is their responsibility and when do they draw the boundary to business. A cultural expectation requires for an educated individual to give back to the community. One may struggle to draw the boundary line. For example, a family childcare provider letting a child take a toy home because she feels that it is a cultural expectation she needs to give back. However, having the child take a toy home every time may be hurting her childcare business. After all, it is just a toy. Gender expectation for the childcare field is different as well. Women are thought to lead in this field and do the teaching as well as the nurturing and providing food. Men are viewed to be in the administrative role, running the logistics of the operation. During a home visit, one can expect to meet with the woman as the teacher. Hmong and education in Minnesota. Education. In the United States, the Asian American and Pacific Islanders youth enrollment for K-12 grew fourfold from 1979 to 2009, and it is expected to grow another 31% by 2019 this year, just short of the growth rate of Latinos at 36%. Although it seems that Asian American students are doing well, with 49% currently having a bachelor's degree or higher, however, fewer than 15%, which includes Cambodian, Hmong, and Laotian, have a bachelor's degree or higher. In fact, Hmong is the highest in having less than high school education at 38%. In 2015, there was about 61,000 Asian American students in Minnesota, and about 11,000 of them attended St. Paul Public. In Minnesota, Hmong is the most spoken language at home for Asian American students in grade K. And in Minneapolis and St. Paul Public School combined, Hmong is still the most spoken language at home for Asian American students, grades K through 12. When asked if Asian Minnesotans children in Minneapolis and St. Paul are ready for kindergarten, 40% and less meet or exceed in St. Paul Public Schools. 72% is ready in Minneapolis. However, by third grade reading and eighth grade math, the numbers of proficiency have decreased. This shows that there still needs to be more support for Asian American students. Hmong and early childhood. Interesting facts. Early childhood. Hmong parents and other Asian parents who are U.S. born prefer to have their child cared for by themselves or by a relative over the age of 16. When asked why, for those who consider childcare arrangement, it is because of the relationship. The majority of Asian families believed it is very important to learn and retain their community's native language. In fact, they believe that proficiency in their language is as important as proficiency in English. For Asian parents who work full-time may not have the job flexibility needed to accommodate midday transportation and personally provide half-day care for their children. This is why childcare oftentimes falls on grandmothers. Grandparents are not trained to prepare children for kindergarten in the United States. Kindergarten preparation is lacking for these children. For caretakers in the Asian community, most believe that a child should start receiving formal early childhood education at age 3. The poverty rate for Hmong children under the age of 5 is the highest among Asian groups in Minnesota. The model minority myth. The quiet, smart, and successful myth continues to perpetuate the stereotype of our Asian American students, leading to pressures and mental health issues in Asian American students. Students feel that teachers do not pay as much attention to them, offering less help, and they are held to be expected to know already. There are some community organizations that work and serve the Hmong community. They are familiar with this community, and the community know them and trust them as well. The list is Hmong Cultural Center, Hmong American Partnership, Hmong Women Achieving Together, or Nuchia, CAPI, Coalition of Asian American Leaders, or CAL, and Hmong 18 Council, Inc. In conclusion, there are different levels of trauma in families, parents, and children based on the war, and it has continued to carry on for these individuals. There are also different religion and different cultural beliefs. When working with this community, one must be aware and be curious and ask questions. When it comes to mental health stigma, this community view it as a negative stigma. When working with this community, one must remember not to jump and offer for services right away yet, but instead ask questions and ask for their cultural perspective. With the diverse generation here in the U.S., every parent have a educational level and everyone is different from the other, so one must be aware and be sensitive to how much education level one generation have compared to the other. When it comes to parent engagement, mothers may be more interested in education than fathers. However, fathers may be the decision maker when it comes to making decisions for services. In early childhood education, the Hmong community continues to be the poorest in poverty. Children are left for grandparents to take care of while parents are away working. To keep in mind that the minority myth perpetuates education for the Asian community, starting from early childhood and continues on throughout life. At the end here, there are still some community organizations that have direct interaction with the Hmong community for further references. Thank you for viewing our Hmong culture presentation. For questions or comments,